Good morning, everyone. Just give us 1 minute as we accept more people in, and we'll be starting the webinar in just 1 minute. Okay, it's 10:02 and we have quite a packed agenda ahead of us, so let's just get started. Good morning, good evening maybe, and welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining our webinar and training session today on SaMD regulations. So just to mention, before we start the event, I just wanted to mention that the webinar is recorded. The slides will be shared post-meeting as well. Just to mention again, we have quite a packed agenda, so we won't be having time for Q&A, but we do have a Q&A function and the chat as well. So if you have any questions, please post them, either Q&A or chat, and we'll be answering all of them post-event. So feel free to just type everything you have here. Okay. So just wanted to share before we get started with the content of the webinar by sharing the agenda and for you to know what to expect today. So because this webinar was open to all, I will be starting just with some introduction of APACMed in case you're not familiar with our association. Then we'll move into the SaMD regulatory landscape, sharing also the content of our paper, so the recommendations and some of the findings that we have. Then we'll be hearing some reflections from TGA and HSA on our position paper, and then we'll move into a really interesting panel discussions before closing. So let's move ahead directly with the introduction of APACMed. So as you may know, APACMed is a regional trade association representing the medical device and IVD companies across the APAC region. Our mission is to improve the standards of care for patients in APAC through the collaborations that we have with the different stakeholders involved. APACMed as a trade association represents really different types of companies. So we have, of course, corporate companies, so our bigger MNCs, but we do also have in our membership startups, associate members such as consulting firms, law firms, distributors as well, and of course, all the local trade associations that we have in our region. I just wanted to share some of the work that we have done in the past few years in the SaMD space. So we started in 2020 when we were having at the time our digital health committee, and we published our first set of position papers looking at SaMD regulations. So we were looking at different countries: China, India, Singapore, Japan, South Korea, and Australia. And once this paper were ready, we moved into having either one-on-one discussions with the authorities or roundtable discussions. And for instance, in 2020, we had engagement with TGA and HSA. And after these discussions, either authorities updated some guidance document that they have or published additional ones to follow some of the industry feedback that we had given. So really grateful for these two authorities for the openness in discussing with us and openness afterward in changing some of the guidance. And we continued having ongoing discussions with HSA in 2021, 2023 with others as well, Thai FDA, others in Southeast Asia. We presented at regional events such as the ASEAN Medical Device Committee, GHWP. 2024, we continued as well all these trainings, all these discussions, focusing as well this time on change management. So we published our position paper following the guidance document that was published by GHWP. 2024 was a busy year. As you can see, we had many presentations, many workshops with different authorities in the region. And then leading up to this year, so for instance, in India, kudos to our local team for their work locally with CDSEO, who recently updated the SaMD guidance documents. We had some trainings on SaMD, PCCP, AIML, and a few others. So really just to mention that really after a paper, we don't just stop at publishing the paper, but there are a lot of engagements with the authorities, with the different industry stakeholders as well that we have in the region. So really wanted to welcome and thank all of you for the active participation in all the trainings and events that we've done. Okay, that was quite a long introduction, so I will be handing over to our first speaker, Mahesh from Medtronic. So Mahesh, please go ahead for setting up the scene of our position paper.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you for APACMed for the opportunity to speak at this event to explain what we are doing here. For those who do not know me, my name is Mahesh Datar. I work with Medtronic Australasia. I'm leader of pre-market applications space. Well, let's get straight into this as there is a lot to cover, and I'm sure that we want to make the best use of everyone's time. As Cindy has pointed out, APACMed is carrying out a lot of activities in this exciting space, and we realize that creating a white paper on this important topic will help all discussions and can be discussed or used as a tool towards a sustainable journey, which ultimately benefits all in this ecosystem, including the most important one, the patients. We also felt the timing was right as there is a lot of activity in the region and more SaMD products are being developed and are entering the market. In addition, these SaMD products are adding a new set of manufacturers, such as software developers and entrepreneurs, which are new to the medical device industry. The conventional industry players and the regulators are also catching up with the rapid development in this area and are trying their best to keep all up to date. A lot of harmonization and reliance activities are taking place under the IMDRF umbrella. Hence, we had to make sure that the scope of the paper was relevant and we were not going to reinvent the wheel as such. And therefore, we decided to review the best and current regulatory practices worldwide for SaMD products and write a paper that will look at the key aspects of SaMD, such as software qualification, software with multiple functions, SaMD classifications, alternative regulatory pathway, pre-sub consultations, and emerging considerations for robotics and cybersecurity. The IMDRF guidance document do already exist in this space from their SaMD working group. For the nerds here, documents N12 final 2014 and N81 with the final 2025. We utilized those documents and also reviewed regulations from the FDA, US FDA, that is, since they are the leading regulator in this space. And to add regional perspective of APAC, we reviewed the regulations and guidance documents from the Australian regulator, the TGA, Singapore Regulatory Agency, the HSA, and the Japanese regulator. And today, the TGA and HSA has graciously agreed to be on the panel discussions today, and we thank you for that. The white paper has some recommendations, best practices for the ever-evolving landscape of SaMD in the APAC region, which will support timely access, regulatory convergence, and effective oversight across the product lifecycle of SaMDs. Before we go to the next speaker, I also wanted to express my sincere gratitude to all the contributors of this report, without whose support this would not have been possible. And with that, I will hand it over to Manan to take us through the key highlights of this paper. Over to you, Manan.
Thank you so much, Mahesh. Thank you for that wonderful introduction to the paper. I'll be going through the key highlights of the SaMD paper. For those who don't know me, I'm Manan Hati. I am I lead digital health regulatory policy for Stryker, based out of US. So it's bright and dark 8 p.m. here, but it's just without further ado, I'll go through each of the 6 points that Mahesh mentioned. So if you go to the next slide, the first one is really, qualification, right? It's like before we start talking about how to regulate medical devices, we have to determine what really is a medical device, because software is actually used in the healthcare space in a variety of ways. So there could be, things like simply that are obvious, not medical devices, are administrative scheduling and billing algorithms. But then also certain clinical decision support technologies that that help the patients, but that help physicians, but they are not making clinical decisions. And then it can go to directly diagnostic therapeutic applications as well. So it's used in a variety of ways, and regulatory resources are really limited, right? So really the strategic recommendation that the paper makes is to focus our regulatory oversight on applications that truly meet the definition of a medical device, so that we can make sure that the devices that do get used in the field are safe and effective and really deliver the best care to ultimately what we are all here to serve, the patients. The next aspect of it is really, and it goes along with making sure that the regulatory oversight is focused, is with software, it's no longer the case where you build a device and that device has one function, and that's what you're regulating or not regulating. It's really, software is really a platform. You can take an example of the iPhone where there is an app that could be using images taken from the iPhone camera and then using some software to analyze them and then identify potential lesions that even as a simple thing as like suggesting maybe you need to go see your PCP for that. The software might be a medical device, but the camera is used for general purpose uh, uh, for general purpose photo taking purposes. So you can have a platform where you have software functions that are regulated, have full qualification and oversight versus things that are just transferring data around and they interact with the medical function, so they need to be evaluated versus other things that have absolutely no relationship and they're just tangentially used. So it's important again for oversight to be focused where it really matters. We all have limited resources, so we need to make sure that providing this risk-based approach fosters the innovation while ensuring public health protection. So then the next aspect of that leads to is now we've determined that the device is a medical device and we've determined what aspect of it is regulated. Then we go into, okay, what should we regulate all medical devices in the same way? And I sort of alluded to it in the qualification side that software is used in a variety of different ways, right? And even if it is used in a medical space, it could be something as simple as providing evidence-based suggestions. So something like a symptom checker, you put in your symptoms and based on established knowledge and data that the algorithm has access to, it could be giving you some diagnoses, potential diagnoses, but ultimately the physician is the ultimate decider. Versus to a little bit more than that, where the algorithm might be again doing some kind of analysis, but that really helps the physician in deciding what should be the next level of treatment. So surgical planning, for instance, the software could be taking CT scan images and suggesting a particular size of an implant, just as an example, versus some software that is using proprietary algorithms and doing medical imaging analyses to identify regions of interest or potential lesions that potentially could be malignant or benign, and making direct diagnosis or treatment decisions on the basis of that. So clearly you can see the risk of the device varies greatly from just providing evidence-based suggestions to using proprietary algorithms that directly provide a treatment or diagnosis recommendation. So similarly, the regulatory oversight should also be similarly tiered. And if we can click once more, Leave, I have a quote there. Yeah, so just like traditional devices, SaMD doesn't really have one size fits all. So the regulatory paradigm should also not be one size fits all. The so and this is like this is nothing new to regulators. There has been for some time now. There are many regulators that are looking at this problem and trying to resolve it in different ways. And so they have come up with a whole slew of different fit-for-purpose regulatory pathways or alternative pathways to help manage this problem. And while keeping, we have to remember that SaMD is highly iterative, it's fast, and to really make sure that patients benefit from the potential of digital health, not only do the regulatory pathways have to be focused, but they also have to foster that innovation and evolve fast, right? So there are several different pathways that the paper goes into detail about. And I won't list the countries here, but it's here for on the slides for you to see on what approaches the other countries have taken in this regard. And one of the main things is expedited review pathways. So these are basically pathways that are designed to provide faster pre-market decisions. So it varies from finding out ways to how to reduce the statutory time that's taken to review pre-market decisions while maintaining safety and effectiveness. And that is key because ultimately we are all making sure that the patient gets the benefit of the device while avoiding the risk as much as possible. One other pathway that, so can you go back one slide, Cindy? I think you're trying to hint that I need to move quickly, so I'll make sure I do that. So I'm in that regard, I'm going to combine the next two, the recognition and reliance, right? It's like regulators don't have to reinvent the wheel and establish a pathway from scratch. There is a mechanism where they can rely on the regulatory clearance from another trusted regulatory authority. And by relying on it, that doesn't mean they're giving up their oversight. They still maintain that oversight. They just give some weight, a significant weight to a product that's already been approved. Versus recognition is they can literally just rely on the regulatory decision of another jurisdiction. And then the final point on this slide, I will say, is change management. Because again, software, while it is highly iterative and easy and quick to develop, it's also very quick to change. And really for things like AI, it needs to change on a rapid basis. Therefore, the efficient change management pathways are equally important. And the NDRF also actually recently published a draft guidance on change management, so which is open for comment period. So I'll encourage every one of you to read that and provide your feedback there. Now we can go to the next slide. And so in the last couple of things I would say, as far as the submission goes, pre-submission consultation really matters. We talked about the fact that we have to make sure that the review times are as small as we can make them while maintaining safety. And one of the ways to do that is having an opportunity to do a pre-submission consultation with the regulators. So I recommend all of the companies here to make sure to, if your regulator does provide this benefit, to avail of that, because it really helps to answer questions that otherwise would have taken a long time with additional information requests. And that does aim for clearer regulatory pathways. And some of the examples of global consultation schemes are listed as FDA has a pre-submission program, so does Japan and others. So, and then the last slide that the paper really focuses on, the last concept is, with digital health, it really brings in some slew of other considerations that we also have to look into. One of them being cybersecurity. So digital health devices are heavily dependent on data and connectivity, and with that comes the risk of a hacker getting access to the data, and maybe they can manipulate the data to say, for a diagnostic device, to say something that could lead to a misdiagnosis and harm that way, or simply to steal the data. And medical data is incredibly valuable on the black market. So cybersecurity is critical for patient safety. So there is a need for secure by design principles. And there are several standards out there. 81001-5-1 is certainly the leading contender, which is increasingly being accepted by various countries in the world. And then the second aspect is robotics. Well, robotics is not technically SaMD, but it is that platform which can provide a way for different algorithms to have their own sort of intended purpose. while being part of the robot. So there's an increase in integration of that software in robotic-assisted surgical devices, and the regulatory frameworks need to consider that not to treat the whole robot as one unit, but it could be a platform with multiple complex software algorithms that sometimes have the same characteristics as a SaMD. So I spoke a lot, a couple of minutes over, but the final thing I would leave you with is the recommendations that we have after reviewing all of the country's regulations and best practices. Is we do need to create these fit-for-purpose regulatory frameworks that have clear criteria for what's a medical device, what's not, and what's the regulatory classification. And having that risk-based approach to regulating the devices is going to make sure that we have we maximize the innovation and benefit to the patients while minimizing the risk, and providing that tailored oversight would help in that domain. And the final point is, again, collaboration is key. So we need to foster collaboration not only between industry and regulators like we're doing now in the activities that Cindy shared, but also among regional health authorities. So we encourage that policy dialogue focused on digital health and SaMD pathways. And APACMed is always ready to foster that collaboration as needed. And with that, I will leave you with this slide. There is a link to the paper where you can read it in more detail and dive through it. And I'll turn it over to Cindy.
Thank you, Manan. Thank you for presenting the paper. And you've been, I think, one of the person who initiated the first paper we had. So thank you for your expertise and sharing all these years. Really proud of the new publications we have. So really thank you from all of us. Okay, I shared the paper, the link to the paper in the chat as well, and I think we can move directly then to the next session. So I will hand over to Gabriel. So Gabriel Haradin, who's Assistant General Director, Medical Device Software Devices, Specialist Evaluation Section from TGA Australia. Thank you very much for being with us today, Gabi, and over to you.
Thank you, Cindy, and sorry that our department section name is such a mouthful, but thank you for the introduction. Hello, everybody online. So I'd like to start by thanking APACMed for extending the invitation to provide reflections and share thoughts on the updated position paper. And it's also fantastic to have this opportunity to hear from APAC colleagues, listen to updates and best practice from the region. So thank you for that. And thank you as well for the updated paper for acknowledging some of the reforms that the TGA has implemented towards international harmonisation. And so hopefully I'm going to power through my reflections, but I'll provide some further insights into the topics discussed in the paper, as well as outlining some of the current focus areas and future work for the TGA. So I'll just start by talking about that software qualification that Manan mentioned, and with respect to the TGA's current software exclusions and also our clinical decision support software, CDSS exemption, as those are actually currently under review. So it was outlined in the paper, but Australia is broadly aligned to the IMDRF's definition of software functions that do and do not qualify as a medical device. But earlier this year, we published the outcomes of a large review that we did last year into AI as a part of a whole of government Australian review into the use of AI across various sectors. And as part of that, we undertook a review of our SaMD legislative framework and our guidance documents to identify where further clarification, refinement, or any strengthening of SaMD regulation, including AI, could occur. Following that review, we identified 5 priority areas to progress potential refinements to our framework. So a key focus is going to be on making sure our regulatory requirements for AI are clear, feedback we've had is that at the moment, information is a bit hard to find and buried in a lot of our overarching SaMD framework and SaMD guidance. And because we regulate AI within our SaMD framework, that's kind of caused this issue. But as I said, we got this feedback very clearly from our consultations, and we're going to make it more prominent, which includes updating that web guidance. Related to that, one of the priority areas is transparency. So we receive feedback that people, including healthcare professionals, want to know what AI has been approved by the TGA. So to address this, we've commenced publishing a list of devices that include AI that have been approved by the TGA, including clarifying requirements for digital scribes, which is an area of focus at the moment. We are also updating our legal definitions to more accurately reflect who is considered to be developer and deployer, and clarifying roles and responsibilities. So traditionally we would refer to manufacturers, but as it was mentioned earlier, the concept of a manufacturer is a bit foreign to someone coming from that software development background who may not have experience in the medical device sector and may not be familiar with that kind of terminology. Feedback from our consultations also called for the TGA to review our software exclusions broadly and our CDSS exemption. So we've commenced this work starting with the digital mental health tool exclusion and that CDSS exemption. And the main driver for reviewing these is that the risk is getting higher in terms of increased use and easier access to these tools. And there's currently insufficient safety and performance considerations by the developers and even by the users of these, which means that greater regulatory oversight is really needed. So moving to, there were some comments in the paper about the experience levels of users and how that's considered in our regulatory framework. So we do consider whether a user is experienced, like a health professional, or inexperienced, like a layperson or a consumer. But Australian regulations also quantify whether the intended health professional is relevant. And this is a term we've defined to ensure that intended users are appropriate for the Australian clinical context. So, for example, if there's a device that provides a diagnosis to a particular health professional in an overseas setting, that role or the training required may actually be different in Australia. So we have that relevant quantification in there just to ensure that the health professional using the device in the Australian context is appropriately trained and qualified as per the manufacturer's intention. With regards to reliance and recognition, so the TGA is always monitoring to identify any changes in other jurisdictions and their impact or any implications for Australian market entry. With software, this is really important because of the nature of how quickly and easily you can deploy software products. And through our work with the IMDRF, the TGA is contributing to a reliance playbook to assist other countries who may be thinking about the various models of reliance they could consider adopting. In relation to the section on pre-submission consultations, we do offer pre-submission meetings as well, and we actually now offer regulatory engagement meetings in addition to those. So regulatory engagement meetings enable early interaction with the TGA. They improve submission quality, as was mentioned previously, and they clarify evidence expectations without providing regulatory advice. So regulatory engagement meetings are for manufacturers, developers, sponsors that are early in that product development or application process, whereas pre-submission meetings are more suitable for applicants that are closer to applying. And we found that these meetings have been very useful for developers of SaMD to assist their timely pathway through our regulatory processes. And while I'm talking about pathways, I'll also mention we are currently reviewing our guidance on how predetermined change control plans, PCCPs, fit into our regulatory framework. So please keep your eye on our website for updates on that. We're currently considering how PCCPs fit into change management within a manufacturer's QMS, as well as the implications for UDI and implications for the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods, the ARTG, changes and variations to those entries. Finally, we've noted the recommendations from APACMed in the paper, which overall align with our approach and our forward work And there are a number of examples we have that demonstrate our alignment with the calls for action that were identified by APACMed. So we do recognise there's always room for improvement, and the APACMed report's very timely as we're currently refining a lot of our SaMD regulatory framework. There are definitely challenges and barriers for adopting and shifting in certain areas to align though, because governments really set these regulations and their decisions are often taken in a broader context, maybe even outside of health. So for example, we see that some governments around the world have made horizontal regulations for cybersecurity or for AI, but where possible, alignment and harmonization is a goal that we have and that we're really prioritizing at the moment. So to wrap up very quickly, I would just like to emphasize and echo with this forum to consider how and where SaMD and AI are being used. Mahesh mentioned earlier that software and AI is not only being developed or manufactured by traditional medical device manufacturers, and many of these products are being developed by a broader range of organizations, from those who take general purpose software and make some adjustments or publish products on website platforms, products being developed locally in clinical or hospital settings by clinicians, or even startups and universities. So there's a real shift in who the regulated stakeholders are, and it's growing, and it is a challenge for us. So in Australia, the TGA, we're currently increasing our and expanding our consideration and communication and education programs outside of our usual stakeholder groups. There is a role for industry groups like APACMed to assist us with this, including expanding how your membership can grow or partner with these groups from that non-traditional medical device manufacturer background. And as an example, in Australia, we have a dedicated medical software industry association that until recently didn't engage much with the TGA or other medical device industry associations in Australia. So very quick thoughts, but thank you for the opportunity to share those insights, and I'll hand back to Cindy.
Thank you, Gabby, for the feedback, the openness as well. And I think a lot of work going on from TGA. We might need to create a new paper soon to reflect all of this. But yeah, really appreciate the insight and the feedback on all this. Okay, we'll hand over next. Let me change the spotlight. Whoop. All right, we'll hand over next to Chinsong Shin, Senior Regulatory Specialist, Digital Health Trend from HSA Singapore. Shorter name, easier for me. So over to you for the remarks.
Thank you, Cindy. And also I would like to thank the APACMed for extending this invitation to the HSA and also giving us this opportunity to reflect on this very thoughtful and timely paper on advancing software as a medical device in Asia Pacific. So as a regulator and a policy maker myself from the HSA, I would also like to share a few reflections after reading through this paper. What are some of our national and also regional perspective that we have? So first, I would also like to touch on the issue of alignment and adaptability that this paper has also highlighted. So this paper rightfully highlighted this need for regulatory convergence. And in Singapore, our own journey from on building up this regulation for software as a medical device has also been one of deliberate alignment with the international best practices, while at the same time we try to retain flexibility for our own local needs. So our SaMD and AI frameworks, we draw heavily from the IMDRF's risk-based approach. And then this is with the aim that we balance safety also, but without limiting innovation. And some of our initiatives that we have put up include the regulatory guidelines for software, medical devices, and also our national guideline, the AI in healthcare guideline, or in short, we call it AGIL. So these initiatives, as far as possible, are designed to be adaptive and also, and where it can, it will grow with technology rather than to constrain technology. However, we also recognize that adaptability also requires more than just a good policy design. So as Manan has also mentioned earlier in his sharing that SaMD doesn't have a one size fit all. So what we also feel there is a need for is that a regulatory system required has to be a learning regulatory system. So for example, when it comes to continuous learning AI and software updates, recognize that static approval models, it may not always be sufficient. So we have implemented programs such as our change management program, which is also a reflection of the IMDRS PCCP framework. And then so this is to allow us to enable iterative innovation while at the same time maintaining regulatory oversight. So a question that we always ask ourselves is how do we as regulators keep pace with technologies that evolve faster than our traditional review cycles? And I also want to talk about in terms of the trust and collaboration. So the use of AI in healthcare will only be successful if our local patients, our clinicians, our developers, innovators, they are also able to trust the ecosystem that is governing it. So for Singapore, our approach, we try to emphasize transparency, reliance, and also shared accountability. And this is also reflected in our Agile guideline. And so this guideline is actually published by the Ministry of Health, and then it's together with HSA and also our National Health Tech Agency, the SINAPS, in 2021. So this shares the good practices for AI developers and also AI implementers. And then because of the rapid pace of development in this AI technology in this landscape, the ministry is also looking to update this guideline to provide updated guidance on the emerging technologies. And then so in addition to the recognition pathways, we also have regulatory recognition and reliance, so such as our expedited and immediate registration routes, where we leverage a confidence-based approach, as mentioned in this paper, that medical device approvals from our reference agencies, such as the TGA, are recognized, and then this is to facilitate and also accelerate the safe access of the medical devices in Singapore. And so beyond efficiency, what we are looking at is that this can help to build confidence and also safety and performance that is not compromised by the speed of the access. So APACMed's call for this stronger regional collaboration also resonates with us strongly. And then we recognize that this APAC region is actually very diverse, but the challenges we face in terms of regulations are increasingly shared. So we face the same challenges that we have to manage the very adaptive algorithms that AI brings, and also the cybersecurity issues that is just very widespread across the region. And so having a greater regulatory reliance and information sharing, this can help us use all our collective expertise within APAC more effectively. And also, I also want to highlight that this paper has also a section that talks about cybersecurity and robotics. So this what we feel is that this points us in the direction of what is the next frontier of regulatory readiness that we need to be prepared for. So as devices become more connected, the lines between software, hardware, and system, they will definitely blur. So regulation will need to evolve from not just a product level assessment, but we need to start to consider perhaps a system level assessment where safety, data, and integrity, and also interoperability are all considered together. So we have also been trying to explore this shift in technology through some of our initiatives, such as the Next Gen MD program, our partnership with the Singapore Manufacturing Federation, the MTIG, and also the Ascent initiative, A-STARS, and also our cross-agency collaboration on digital health governance with such as with the Ministry of Health, the Cybersecurity Agency, and also SINAPS. But this also raises important questions for us as regulators and policymakers, that how do we continue to ensure that innovation in technology and AI remains explainable and also accountable? And how do we create the guardrails that enable responsible experimentation of this technology while we still try to maintain the public trust in this system? So to close my sharing, I would once again want to commend APACMed for bringing the structure and clarity to this very fast-moving and often fragmented area of health regulation. So this report has not only highlighted where we are, but more importantly, it points to where we should be heading to, and that is towards greater clarity and also towards convergence. So from Singapore's, from our perspective, the regulatory challenge for us is not only to keep up with technology, but also to shape it responsibly and also ensuring that AI serve not just our patients safely, but also ethically and also equitably. And with that, I look forward to the panel discussion later on. Yeah. Thank you.
Cindy, are you with us or we lost her? Okay, I think Cindy, because of some technical glitch, probably she is not there. But can you all hear me, Mahesh? Okay, perfect. So I know that while we are waiting for Cindy, considering the time, and we know that what's next. So I think I'm taking liberty to go first while Cindy is coming back and joining. So this is now the time for the panel discussion, right? And in our panel, since we cannot project the slide because we rely on Cindy, but in panel today, we have our respected colleague from TGA, Gabby, and we have Ching Xiang from HSA. And Manan and Mahesh, you all have heard before already, right? So they are the part of the core team who worked on this paper along with Aditya from Terimo. He is the India cluster lead and he's the chair for the India COE of APACMed as well. And then we have Mandy, who is from GIS. She is based out of Singapore. Okay, so Cindy is, I think, back. Okay, so then we have Mandy. So Mandy is GIS and she is also our vice chair for the Southeast Asia COE. And this is Sharath. I'm also part of the core team working on this paper. I'm the chair of the APACMed Regulatory Affairs Committee and very glad to be here moderating this panel. So with this, considering the time, right, I think I will just go directly with my question. And we heard about the fit for purpose thanks to Mahesh and to Manan setting the context, and really appreciate Gabby and Chin Cheng for sharing the TG and Singapore perspective. And that's where I'm coming with the first question. We are hearing a lot and we are discussing a lot. And this APACMed position paper also highlights the value of leveraging the IMDRF framework for consistent classification and the risk categorization of the SaMD. So what are the biggest barrier in as the regulator in fully adopting IMDRF principle, and how can regulators in the region build greater alignment or reliance on the global principle while still addressing the local need? Because this is the point which we hear again and again. So for this question, I think I will go first to Gabby.
Thank you, Sharad. It's a great question and something I mentioned a little bit earlier, but in Australia, we've adopted almost all of the IMDRF SaMD guidances in full. And we were able to do this because of our principles-based regulatory framework. I mentioned that there are some barriers and challenges for regulators to adopt those global guidances. And part of that is related to that governments make regulations and they have broader considerations beyond one sector, and they have shifting priorities. So I talked to the horizontal regulations that we've seen, like the EU AI Act that goes across sectors. We don't have something like that here in Australia, so we work across different sectors where we have overlap, like with cybersecurity and with data privacy. So that does come with its own opportunities, but also challenges as well. And at the end of the day, we have our own domestic legislation that we have to consider when we're adopting global guidances into our regulatory framework. So it's really a balance of those things.
Well, thank you so much. I think it's very insightful, and we understand that the framework development and the priority from the TGA. So that's where Qingsheng, coming back to you. I think Singapore is also one of the authority in last couple of years. We have seen a lot of guidance and the regulations which are more and more aligning to the IMDRF. So I'm just going back to you. What do you think is the biggest barrier for as a regulator in fully adopting IMDRF while focusing on the local need?
Thank you, Sharad. So for us, I mean, we recognize that the IMDRF framework, it provides a shared language for guidance for all the regulatory authorities, but we are also sharing from our own regulatory journey, where when we started off into this medical device regulations, where we not only have to define what a medical device is, but along the way, we also put in the effort to also continue to refine this definition. So, for example, where there's a need to examine certain types of devices, certain types of products, then we will put it into clarity that these are the certain classes or products that we would not consider as medical device. So this flexibility, in a way, it enables us to help us to enable and embed this IMDRF principles, concepts more easily into our legislation. And then also, we also understand that there's also the consideration on the healthcare priorities and also the risk tolerance across the different jurisdiction. So, for example, for one jurisdiction, if the focus is on access and affordability, and also in another jurisdiction where they may want to focus on risk, or they may want to emphasize the focus on having advanced AI governance, or putting more focus in cybersecurity. This will actually shape how the jurisdiction prioritize their alignment with the IMDRF models. So this very varied consideration for each jurisdiction, we feel that sharing from our own consideration that maybe as regulators, what we can consider is also to build on this regulatory reliance, the sharing of the work, also building a stronger regional network, such as the one we have is the Medical Device Directive, and also having this local calibration that is constrained by this global guardrails, where the regulator can adopt the IMDRF principles, but considering their own national requirements and priorities, they can also fine-tune it such that everyone respects this national context, but we build on the shared foundation that is aligned across the region.
I think that is very meaningful point, Qingsheng. Thank you so much. Means definitely, I think you have very clearly highlighted looking into the local need and the strategic framework, but at the same time to avoiding the retreating or recreating the wheel and looking and balancing out. So which is perfectly the fit for purpose and the agile regulatory framework, which even the paper is also talking about. So with this, I'm just changing the gear a little bit, right? And I will go to Mahesh first and then Mandy from a Singapore and the Australia, the industry perspective, because a lot of movements are happening. So when we are looking into the rapid evolution of AI and ML, right, enable SaMD. So what mechanism can be put in place to allow adaptive regulation, for example, through the post-market monitoring or the pre-certification, without slowing access to innovation? Because when it is coming to the patient group, when it is coming to the KOL and the HCP and the industry, we every time talk about that the current regulatory frameworks are not fit for those innovation, and even that is a equal challenge. So with this, Mahesh, over to you.
Thanks, Sharad. I think that's a very important and hard question to answer in a way, because patient safety is paramount from both from a regulator perspective as well as a company perspective, because we are in there for the patient. Keeping patient safety and developing or deciding or answering the question on patient safety requires evidence. Now, how do you generate the evidence is the key question. And there are ways that the TG has in the past has, through their guidance documents, talked about real world evidence. And as Gabby mentioned, they are going to come for PCCP as well. But let's just focus on the real world evidence that they have put forward. I think they published a guidance document 2024. Now, there are a lot of things in that document which requires a discussion from the manufacturers and the person who is going to collect that evidence, but it's all retrospective in a way. And what happens is the cycle of renovation is too fast. And while you collect the data, it may not be sufficient. And if you are especially an entrepreneur or a new person in this area, it's going to be challenging. So to me, I'm thinking the main thing here is there is no magic bullet here for which I can provide. But the key point I'm making, and which the TG is doing really well, to be honest with you, is constant communication and discussion with industry groups, patient groups, as well as IMDRF or between the regulators. And if we keep talking amongst ourselves, with the patient at the center of the discussion, I'm pretty sure we'll come up with some kind of agreement where we can go forward. And an example can be, and we are doing a lot on reliance, right? Even if the regulations may be different a little bit here and there, if we are able to, as we have done in this paper, articulate what is the difference and then talk to the regulators, only this part is different, the rest you do not need to look at it because it has a reliance program. I think that will also accelerate the approvals in different countries. And that's how I look at it right now. I think it's communication, reliance, and keep working together to get to that part where we want the patients to benefit. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mahesh. I think that is very meaningful. And thanks for calling out the RWE and the PCCP as well. So, Mandy, coming to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sharat. I think Ching Shang also mentioned, right? In Singapore, there's this change management program that helps with the manufacturer to adapt faster in terms of getting the approval of the software version changes. And it's applicable to the APACMed enabled software as well. So manufacturers can actually look into that GN37 guidance document to implement this change management program. And they can also tag together with the new registrations and change notification to submit together. And also recently, IMDRF released the PCCP document for public consultations. So I would like to also encourage the audience here who are interested to give feedback. The expiry date is until 8th of December this year. So to provide your feedback to help with the fit for purpose regulation framework development. And I foresee when IMDRF publish these PCCP documents in future, it will actually brings by the manufacturer more often into the QMS system to implement into the document change control procedure as well. So that will actually help with the adoption of the PCCP program in the design development process.
Yeah. No, I think when I'm hearing about this key focus on regulatory advance on the pre-market and post-marketing side, right, where Mahesh, you have called for the RWE, and Mandy, you are just reminding on the PCCP, IMDRF as well. Now, taking a step back, right, when we are discussing about this advanced regulatory framework, I think still we do see some challenge with the definition and scope of the SaMD, which can very much vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, right? So the key question which I'm coming is that what are those some kind of practical step and thoughts that could help regulator and manufacturer achieve clarity on the borderline cases? For instance, just like Manan called in his presentation as well, summarizing on the wellness app and the clinical decision support tool, or the use of the RWE kind of thing. So for this question, I will go first to Gabby and then to Chingsheng. I'm coming to you.
Thanks, Sharad. It is a great question. It is a huge question. Could probably talk for another half an hour about it. But I mentioned earlier regarding SaMD scope and definition, So the TGA is currently reviewing our framework, including our exclusions, which basically means what we consider and regulate as a medical device and what we don't. And part of that has involved significant consultation with industry, which has really helped us to identify the risks and the priority areas and begin to address those. So I called out digital scribes before. That's something that we're seeing a trend in increasing numbers in Australia, and moving from that scribe territory of just being a notation tool to then moving into medical device territory where it's providing diagnosis, making recommendations for treatment plans. So consultation and feedback has been really key. And to Mahesh's point before, our collaboration with industry has been really pivotal in providing input into those reforms. For improving transparency and communication, some of the practical steps that we've taken. So we have a contract in place with an organisation called And Health, which is Australia's national digital health initiative. And they focus on providing support to new developers and startups to help them understand regulations in Australia and navigate that landscape. And it really assists our capacity because then we can shift our focus to applications and to the more complex matters. So we work really closely with them. We have we co-host monthly webinars with them. We have regular meetings to discuss trends and questions that they're receiving. So we're updated on devices that are in development and common questions that are coming through from industry. And I talked a bit before about regulatory engagement meetings and pre-submission meetings and how they're really useful for clarifying regulatory requirements and any differences between classifications across jurisdictions and evidence requirements between jurisdictions as well. And that makes those regulatory pathway processes more efficient. We also are often present at industry education webinars like this one, presenting updates, talking about reforms and making ourselves available for panel discussions, live Q&As, things like that. So that's been really helpful. And horizon scanning has been really important and very useful for us to anticipate devices that may come into Australia soon and how they may fit into our regulatory framework.
This is very exciting to hearing about the digital health initiative. And Gabby, personally, I have joined a couple of those RWE workshop which TG has organized, and that was very, very insightful. So, and the horizon scan is another thing. Like in the industry side, definitely we are talking a lot about intelligence, or even within APACMed, we have some work which the team is doing great. But hearing from you is really encouraging. Now coming to you, Chinsheng, and I know that we are just having the 1 minute, but I have just quickly checked with Cindy and I'm leaving to the participant here. If you wanted to still engage with this discussion, you can stay with us, but we are extending 15 minutes because I am not done with my curiosity. So Chingsheng, I think this is very important topic and I do not want it to cut short, right? So please go ahead.
Yeah, so for digital health, because of the at the rate that it's changing, improving and evolving, so we do see it's true that the lines between what is regulated as a medical device and what is not regulated as a medical device is increasingly getting blurred. So our officers day to day, actually we do see such cases, and then it's also some of them are also becoming harder for us to decide, is this a wellness device or is this a medical device that we want to regulate? So from a regulatory standpoint, we recognize that as if we as a regulator, if we cannot provide this certainty, then it will make it very difficult for the industry to follow. So, and then this can sometimes even slow down innovation or result in under-regulation. So our focus also is to achieve, we try our best to achieve this clarity. And then so in Singapore, we have tried to put out some of the practical steps, such as providing clearer qualification guidelines, such as our guidelines on the risk classification of a standalone mobile application, and also the qualification of clinical decision support software. So this we aim to give developers an example of what is a medical device, what is not a medical device, and then the focus will be on the intended medical purpose. If the software can influence the diagnosis or a treatment decision, then it's likely a medical device. If it's just to promote a patient's wellness or it's to provide education, then it would not be. And then and similar to TGA, we also have a consultation scheme. So we do actively encourage the industry, the developers to also engage us through this device development consultation. So this gives the platform for developers to discuss their products with us, and then also sometimes from this consultations, this meetings, we picked up all these borderline cases where we gave our advice that this product that you're developing actually it does not, it will not be a medical device in Singapore. So providing this clarity to the developers, it helps them reduce this uncertainty, it saves their time, and also help them continue the development while still complying with the regulation.
Yeah, no, definitely the pre-consultation program, either in the TGA or the Singapore, when it comes to the startup community and the, developers, I think getting those opportunity to interact with the health authority, getting those insight, it is really, really supportive. And we understand the socialization which HSA or TGA is already doing with the industry and partners. Now, after hearing from the regulators inside, I would like to go to the Manan. Manan, because you very clearly called out, and when we worked together on this paper, you were very passionate talking about this topic as well. So I'm coming to you to hear your insight about what the manufacturers can do to even on this clarity on the borderline cases as well.
Absolutely, thank you. So I'll talk about it from a US standpoint as well. So right, so from as far as the US is concerned, we have similar guidance documents on the general wellness products, SaMD qualification, clinical decision support guidance. But ultimately, as Gabby mentioned, the regulators work within the confines of the law that is passed. And in US, actually, there is a law that says that if you meet 4 criteria, then you're not considered a medical device. So if you're only collecting data, if you're not analyzing data, if you're only providing recommendations and that the basis of the recommendation is available to the physician, then you're not considered a medical device. However, in the CDS guidance documents, particularly, FDA does go in and talk about what falls within those criteria and what comes out of it. So one of the aspects that they say is time sensitive. If you're providing recommendations that require a time sensitive action, then that potentially is really advising the next level of treatment rather than just providing recommendations or training purposes. Automation bias is another aspect. They do need to define them a little bit more than they have in the guidances, but those are some of the things that can be looked at. So from a manufacturer standpoint, I think it's really key to, and I think Gabby alluded to this as with an algorithm may be introduced with I think the example was scribing for scribing purposes, and then slowly it expands into goes beyond scribing and providing recommendations. So from a manufacturer standpoint, just like we need clarity from the regulators, the manufacturers also need to be clear on what is the intended purpose of the device and to constantly monitor it. If there is any change to the device, have a proper analysis of does this change affect the classification that was already identified. So I think it's a handshake that needs to happen both ways to really make sure that both the manufacturer resources are properly engaged in where a submission is needed and regulations are needed, as well as a regulator is not stretched thin in regulating devices that may not have that much impact to patient safety.
Thanks so much, Manan, for calling out very clearly the shared responsibility, right? Means we
Absolutely.
all are in this together. It's not only the policymakers or the regulators, equally like the industry participation. So that's where I'm coming to the next question, right? One of the recommendation of this paper is calling out about strengthening the collaboration between the regulators, industry, and developers to address the technical gaps and promote common understanding. So, what forms of engagement or the capacity building or the training could make the greatest impact in building regulatory capacity across the region and across the jurisdictions? So, this time I will go to Aditya.
Thank you so much, Sharad. I think a very powerful question, but I think it makes my job easier after listening every panelist who has been talking about collaboration, who has been talking about constant communication. We heard about interaction with the industry at different platforms. So I think that makes my job easier to answer this. And the most effective strategies which could be employed or deployed could be multi-stakeholder collaboration, which could be joint training initiatives and regulatory alliance pilot programs. And there could be a modular tiered training programs, which could include interactive workshops and webinars. The one like we are doing now, where there is a lot of interaction which is going on, and people are able to hear out the both sides of the coin. And by doing so, we are uniting regulators, the industry professionals, and the developers in these joint workshops, peer learnings, and digital learning platforms, where we can actually cultivate a common understanding and bridge technical gaps and expedite the regulatory convergence. And one of the strongest example I could quote here is could be Japan's PMDA ATC Joint Training Initiative. Even though it is about training hundreds of regulators across Asia through hands-on programs in clinical evaluation and post-marketing surveillance. But these programs are not only to build technical skills, but they also foster a shared regulatory language and trust among agencies. And we can definitely scale such kind of models through digital platforms and public-private partnership, which can significantly accelerate capacity building across the region. Thank you, Sharad.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Means definitely the PPF is a very, very powerful avenue looking into, and we are seeing across the region and across the jurisdiction a lot of work which is going around. Um, Before moving to the next question or the last, I'm just mindful we are having like 7 minutes. I still wanted to check in with Gabby and Chinsheng if you are having any additional point or insight from the regulator's perspective to add, any comment here.
Thanks, Sharad. I think I've mentioned it already and sort of touched on that collaboration between industry and the regulators. I also attended the Japanese PMDA, one of the webinars last year, I think it was, and I got a lot out of it. So yeah, I can definitely talk to the benefits of those APAC regulator training workshops and webinars. And one of our local Australian industry groups also facilitates that kind of APAC regulatory collaboration and communication. The MTAA, they had a regulatory summit earlier this year, and they brought regulators from Japan and from Singapore to present to us, and the TJ was present. So we had industry and then 3 different regulators all in the same room talking about these topics, speaking the same language. So that was really beneficial. But no further points to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby. Chinsheng?
I do not have anything much to add on, but it's really constant engagement between the industry and the regulators so that we know what each side is thinking at that point in time.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm moving towards just binding up this panel discussion, but I think one form of binding up this conversation is with my last question, which is a kind of round table, and I'm coming to each one of you. And I wanted to close this panel discussion with this question that what is the single most impactful regulatory reform which Asia Pacific could implement in the next 3 years to advance the SaMD innovation? So on my screen, Mahesh, I will just go with you first,
Okay.
clockwise.
Thanks, Sharat. That's a great question. My answer to that is just one word: reliance. We have here Singapore and TGA, and I think Japan and Korea are moving ahead as well. But if all the regulators in APAC accept the reliance practices and accept that there are limited resources and we can trust each other as a regulator and just do the review, bare minimum review of whatever is different, that would help all of us in this region pretty much. That would be my answer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mahesh. So Reliance. Now Manan.
Yeah. So my one word is going to be harmonization, right? And I will not say standardization because that's not possible. Every regulator cannot have the exact same rules, but as far as possible, most of us are global companies, and our products that we make are also global. So having a harmonized regulatory framework would be key to make sure that patients get access to most innovative devices in the quickest manner. And it will also help on the reliance side, right? Because if the frameworks are harmonized, there will be more trustworthy regulators that you can rely on. So.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you, Manan. Gabby.
The answers that have been given so far are already excellent. So I'll go with something a little bit different, but on the same kind of theme of harmonization and reliance, but particularly around cybersecurity. So I think Manan mentioned it in his presentation, but it will help with innovation by building consumer trust and sort of engagement with SaMD or AI-enabled devices, but having harmonized regulations around cybersecurity will help to ensure data privacy is maintained, whether the device is supplied and developed in Australia or if it's developed in Singapore, in India, wherever. But having that harmonized approach to something that is such a global issue will be really important.
No, this is very important point, Gabby. Thank you so much. I'm just noting down all those points. Probably it may be coming as a summary of APACMed when SaMD is coming out. So Qingsheng.
So for us, because I come from a post-market background as well, so I think it will be very impactful if across the region we can continue to build on this mutual trust via better transparency and also greater data sharing across this region. So this can be in the form of confidentiality, protected channels for sharing the assessment outcome, any real world information that we have gathered, and then also this allows regulators to across this region to have access to this data, and then this can also help perhaps speed up decision-making processes. Also, maybe also similar to how reliance works, reduces duplicative work.
Yeah, definitely because of the different life cycle and the iterative nature of this kind of product. While like the pre-market is very, very important, the same focus on the post-market as well. Thank you so much, Chen Xiang. Aditya.
Thank you, Sharad. I think most of the points have already been covered, but let me give it a shot. I think establishing something, a regional regulatory sandbox and adaptive pathways for SaMD, because I think these mechanisms balance innovation with patient safety by allowing conditional or phased approvals based on real-world evidence and post-marketing data. And I think again, I'll try to link it up with one of the examples which has been demonstrated by PMDA, where I think in September 2023, they came out with Dash for SaMD initiative, which was kind of an introduction of two-stage approval process for SaMD products, where they were giving conditional approvals based on the early evidence, followed by full approval if you demonstrate and come back with post-marketing data collection. I think this is something which can be one of the ways going forward, where you're looking at having collaboration with the industry partners, trying to understand the interpretation from both the sides.
Yeah, no,
Thank you,
thank you
Sharat.
so much. I think regulatory sandbox is something which we have seen with some jurisdictions. Singapore also doing something related to the cyber security. We are aware. Malaysia is also announcing that for the SaMD and AI/ML based devices. So we are in exciting time right now. Last but not the least, Mandy, I'm coming to you for the closer
Yeah.
of this panel discussion.
Thank you, Sharat. I agree with all the speakers and all the panelists sharing. Harmonizations is important, and also the harmonized adoptions of the recognized consensus standard or harmonized standards are also equally important from my point of view. For example, the IEC 60304 medical device software lifecycle standards, and also if in future, I know that now EU or US, they are actually talking about the consensus standard or harmonized standard for the AI QMS. Perhaps that may even future affect our regulatory framework for AI ML products. So over back to you, Sharat.
Thank you so much, Mandy. And I think you guys have really summarized it very well, this 30-minute discussion. So without any undue delay, I will just go back and hand it over to Cindy for a formal closer. Cindy, are you back?
Yes, I'm back, and we talk about innovation, and also, of course, my Teams has to crash in the middle of the webinar. But thank you, Sharat, for taking over, and thank you all for the insightful discussions. We are actually over time that we accorded. So thank you again, all of you, for your insights. APACMed will be, of course, continuing the engagement with the authorities, with the industry, local trade association as well. Gabby mentioned a few that we're not connected with, for instance. So happy to explore further additional partnerships as well. Please feel free to reach out if you want to learn more about SaMD or any other topics. We'll have more position papers coming next year as well, looking at cybersecurity and AI, for instance. So looking forward to the next steps, and really thank you all of you for staying with us, and to all our panelists and participants today. Have a good rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.